Good evening and welcome to this session on Javed Saab's poetry, which is obviously in Urdu, and I have attempted translations in English, so you'll spend the next half an hour to 40 minutes surviving or not.
Good evening. Great to be back at AKLF. You already know that this is a session we're doing on Javed Akhtar's poetry, the Shair Extraordinaire. This is a slightly different session, so I will sort of lay out the framework so you know what we're trying to do here. As many of you know, the poems are from the books titled Tarkash, that's my beleaguered copy, and Lava. And Mr. Ghosal here, or Sumantra as he insists that I call him,
Indeed.
He will be taking you through the translations, but you'll also alongside first hear Javed Saab recite the poems in Urdu. So what you'll hear is first the Urdu, then his translation. I'll be mute for the first bit whilst the translations go on, and then we get chatting. So over to you, Sumantra.
Thank you, Supriya. Javed Saab will appear on that screen. Since he's used to film and video, I will be live. Anyway, to start, since I want introduction, but a journey as well, I will start with two poems of Javed Saab's, which is from an early period, both as in terms of the writing as well as what he dealt with, which was his childhood. And that childhood happened in Lucknow, where he was with his maternal grandparents. So the first poem, Mera Aangan, Mera Ped, is purely from the perspective of a small town. And therefore there is in it, I feel, a childlike simplicity which I find bewitching. We'll start with the first video, Mera Aangan, Mera Ped.
मेरा आंगन कितना कुशादा कितना बड़ा था, जिसमें मेरे सारे खेल समा जाते थे, और आंगन के आगे था वो पेड़ कि जो मुझसे काफ़ी ऊंचा था। लेकिन मुझको इसका पता था, जब मैं बड़ा हो जाऊंगा इस पेड़ की फुनगी भी छू लूंगा। बरसों बाद मैं घर लौटा हूं, देख रहा हूं यह आंगन कितना छोटा है, पेड़ मगर पहले से भी थोड़ा ऊंचा है। क्या बात।
To ditch this and go with this. Can I go with this, please? Can you hear me? My courtyard, my tree. My courtyard, both broad and wide, could afford, in a most spacious way, to contain my play. Beyond the yard was that tree, so much taller than me. But I fully knew this to be true, that later when I grew up, it would be easy for me to touch the tip of that tree. Years later, when I've come home again, I can see how unfree, how small this courtyard is. But the tree, I see, has grown a little more and is taller than before.
Beautiful.
The second poem continues in the tone of romantic nostalgia, which is evident in Javed Saab's early poetry, but to my mind there is a critical difference. A dissonant note has crept in. We realize that the sepia is now lit by a harsher, more direct light. For once the big city, Mumbai, enters the picture, everything changes. Second video, Wo Kamra.
मैं जब भी जिंदगी की चिलचिलाती धूप में तपकर, मैं जब भी दूसरों के और अपने झूठ से थक कर, मैं सबसे लड़के खुद से हार के जब भी उसे कमरे में जाता था, वो हल्के और गहरे कत्थई रंगों का एक कमरा, वो बेहद मेहरबान कमरा जो अपनी नर्म मुट्ठी में मुझे ऐसे छुपा लेता था जैसे कोई माँ बच्चे को आंचल में छुपा ले, प्यार से डांटे, ये क्या आदत है, जलती दोपहर में मारे मारे घूमते हो तुम। वो कमरा याद आता है, दबीज और खासा भारी, कुछ जरा मुश्किल से खुलने वाला वो शीशम का दरवाज़ा कि जैसे कोई अक्खड़ बाप अपने खुरदुरे सीने में चाहत के समंदर को छुपाए हो। वो कुर्सी और उसके साथ वो जुड़वा बहन उसकी, वो दोनों दोस्त थी मेरी। वो एक गुस्ताख मुंहफट आईना जो दिल का अच्छा था। वो बेहंगम सी अलमारी जो कोने में खड़ी एक बूढ़ी अन्ना की तरह आईने को तनबीह करती थी। वो एक गुलदान नन्हा सा बहुत शैतान उन दोनों पे हंसता था। दरीचा या ज़हानत से भरी एक मुस्कुराहट और दरीचे पर झुकी वो बेल, कोई सब सरगोशी। किताबें ताक में और शेल्फ पर संजीदा उस्तानी बनी बैठी, मगर सब मुंतज़िर इस बात की मैं उनसे कुछ पूछूं। सिरहाने नींद का साथी, थकन का चारागर, वो नर्म दिल तकिया मैं जिसकी गोद में सर रख कुछ छत को देखता था। छत की कड़ियों में न जाने कितने अफसानों की कड़ियां थीं। वो छोटी मेज पर और सामने दीवार पे आवेदा तस्वीरें मुझे अपनाइयत से और यकीन से देखती थी, मुस्कुराती थी। उन्हें शक भी नहीं था एक दिन मैं उनको ऐसे छोड़ जाऊंगा। मैं एक दिन यूं भी जाऊंगा कि फिर वापस ना आऊंगा। मैं अब जिस घर में रहता हूं बहुत ही खूबसूरत है। मैं अब जिस घर में रहता हूं बहुत ही खूबसूरत है, मगर अक्सर यहाँ खामोश बैठा याद करता हूं वो कमरा बात करता था।
क्या बात कह दी, वो कमरा बात करता था।
I remember that room. Whenever I felt inflamed by the scorching heat of life, whenever I had tired of the untruths of others and my own lies, when having fought with everyone and losing out to myself, I would go to that room of pied brown color, that room of such giving grace, that would hide me in its tender embrace, like a mother who hides her child in the folds of her clothing and loving scolds. What is this habit of gadding about out in the scorching afternoon sun? I remember that room, that thick, heavy rosewood door that opened with effort, like a surly father with a roughened heart who hides within a sea of compassion. That chair, and with her, her twin sister. They were both my friends. That insolent mirror that spoke bluntly but had a good heart. That towering almara that stood in a corner and like an ancient matron admonished the looking glass. That flower vase, young and full of mischief, that would laugh at them both. A window, or was it a knowing smile, and inclining upon the window, a vine whispering in green. Books in an alcove and on shelves sat posing like solemn teachers, all of them expectant for a word from me. At the head of the bed, sleep's companion, physician to my fatigue, that soft-hearted pillow in whose lap I would lay my head and look up at the ceiling in whose rafters were wrapped so many stories. On that small table and on the wall in front stood pictures that looked on me as if I was one of them and could be trusted. They smiled. They did not suspect that one day I would leave them. One day I would leave such that I would not come back. The house that I live in now is very beautiful, but often when I sit here in quiet recollection, I remember that room would speak to me.
Wonderful. I think that deserves a round of applause. वो कमरा याद आता है. Translating that can't be easy. As promised, I'm going to be on mute. You'll hear Javed Sahab and Sumantra.
I keep forgetting this very important object. Given the number of fine love lyrics Javed Sahab has written for films, one would expect him to mine that rich vein in his poetry as well. This is not so. In fact, when Javed Sahab was asked, "Aap kya romantic shairi nahi karte?" he famously said, "Bhaiya, wo hum muft nahi karte." One finds no mooning lover in his poems. There is instead a modern matter-of-factness that can sometimes border on cynicism. We are left wondering, if this is love, what is love? And so the next poem is aptly titled Dushwari, Dilemma. Next video.
मैं भूल जाऊं तुम्हें अब यही मुनासिब है, मैं भूल जाऊं तुम्हें अब यही मुनासिब है, मगर भुलाना भी चाहूं तो किस तरह भूलूं, कि तुम तो फिर भी हकीकत हो कोई ख्वाब नहीं, यहाँ तो दिल का ये आलम है क्या कहूँ कमबख्त, भुला सका न ये वो सिलसिला जो था ही नहीं, वो एक ख्याल जो आवाज़ तक गया ही नहीं, वो एक बात जो मैं कह नहीं सका तुमसे, वो एक रब्त जो हम में कभी रहा ही नहीं, मुझे है याद वो सब जो कभी हुआ ही नहीं।
याद वो सब जो कभी हुआ ही नहीं।
It's right I forget you now, but even were I to mean it, the question remains, how? After all, you are real, by no means a dream. What a state, oh foolish heart, that I cannot bring myself to forget those events that never happened. That thought unspent that never went to my lips. That word unuttered that I could not say to you. That connect that in effect wasn't there. My memories are astir with things that never were, that never happened. Urdu poetry has a great tradition of the ghazal. People who have but a passing familiarity with Urdu know about the ghazal, or think they know about the ghazal. But what perhaps they don't know is the strictness of the form. That knowledge, I believe, enhances one's appreciation of the ghazal. And I thought, who better to teach you about the form than the master? Next video.
Ghazal is like a box of assorted biscuits. You know, within one box you have different kind of biscuits. Some of them salted, some of them are sweet, some are cream biscuits and so on and so forth, but within one box. In Ghazal, every couplet means shair, जिसे हम बोलते हैं. Shair is made of two lines. And lines are called misra. एक misra, दूसरा misra. एक shair. Every shair is complete in itself. It may not have any connection with the shair earlier or the shair later. It is a complete statement in itself. So it means Ghazal has 6 shairs or 7 shairs or 10 shairs. Each one of them is complete. And it may be different shairs, may be on totally different topics. Nothing to do with each other. Then why they are together? How they are together? They are together because, one, that they have the same meter, the length of the line. Then they are put together and they are within this club because of the rhyme. Like, I'll give you an example. Dil naza tujhe hua kya hai? आखिर इस दर्द की दवा क्या है? तो द राइम इज हुआ, दवा. दिस इज राइम. बट देयर इज वन मोर थिंग इन इट which is repeated, which is recurring. That is, हुआ क्या है, दवा क्या है, ये क्या है is being repeated. While the rhyme is changing, दवा, हुआ, इधर क्या है same है. This क्या है is called radif. And the rhyme is called kafiya. The first share of the ghazal has rhyme in both the lines. जैसे ये है, दिल नादा तुझे हुआ क्या है, आखिर इस दर्द की दवा क्या है, हमें मुश्ताक और वो बेजार. नाउ देयर इज नो राइम हियर. या इलाही ये माजरा क्या है, अगेन द राइम कम्स एंड द रदीफ कम्स. So this is the discipline. Now within this discipline, in every share, you can say different things. They may or may not be connected with the earlier or the later. The first share of the ghazal, where the rhyme is in both the lines, is called matla. Matla, in literal sense from dictionary, it means horizon. So the first share that has rhyme in both the things is the horizon of ghazal, and after that, because of the meter, because of the rhyme and the same radif, which keeps on coming again and again, they are together.
So if you get nothing else from this session, at least you got that. Now, what happened was that Javed Saab said to me that whatever foolishness I indulge in, I must never, never translate ghazals. It simply does not lend itself to English poetry. Of course, once he said that, I had to do it. So I not only wanted to translate ghazals, but I wanted to keep the form intact. In other words, the translation for me would have to maintain the strictness of qafiya and radif, which is rhyme and refrain. So let's hear Javed Saab do Nigal Gaye, which is the next video, and I will do my version of it where I've tried to keep the rhyme and the refrain and tried against his every imprecation to translate a ghazal.
निगल गए सबकी सब समंदर, ज़मीं बची अब कहीं नहीं है, बचाते हम अपनी जान जिसमें, वो कश्ती भी अब कहीं नहीं है. वाह 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 वाह. बहुत दिनों बाद पाई फुर्सत तो मैंने खुद को पलट के देखा. बहुत दिनों बाद पाई फुर्सत तो मैंने खुद को पलट के देखा, मगर मैं पहचानता था जिसको, वो आदमी अब कहीं नहीं है. वाह 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 वाह. गुजर गया वक्त दिल पे लिखकर, न जाने कैसी अजीब बातें. गुजर गया वक्त दिल पे लिखकर, न जाने कैसी अजीब बातें. वरक पलटता हूँ अब जो दिल के, तो सादगी अब कहीं नहीं. वाह 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 वाह. वाह वाह. कितने सच्चे. तुम अपने कस्बों में जाके देखो, वहाँ भी अब शहर ही बसे हैं. वाह 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 वाह. अच्छा. तुम अपने कस्बों में जाके देखो, वहाँ भी अब शहर ही बसे हैं, कि ढूंढते हो जो जिंदगी तुम, वो जिंदगी अब कहीं नहीं. वाह वाह वाह.
You can also say wah wah. I'm quite sure the wah wah will reach him wherever he is.
All is gulped down by the ocean. Of ground, the slightest trace is nowhere to be found. A boat might have kept me afloat, but even that little space is nowhere to be found. After many days, I got a moment to turn back and look at me, but that person I had once embraced is nowhere to be found. Time wrote such strange things upon the heart and then moved on. When I turn the pages there now, a simple grace is nowhere to be found. The molten heat of afternoon has scorched everything in sight. The freshness of that morning face is nowhere to be found. Go back to where you came from, you'll find cities have sprung up there. The life you sought, that you thought was your solace, is nowhere to be found. Javed Saab's later poems have, I suppose like the man himself, turned more and more to polemic argument. And so his titles have very often taken on the garb of questions as if in a debate. Ye khel kya hai? Or ye waqt kya hai? There is also a deepening engagement with philosophy, as you will see in the next poem, Waqt.
ये वक्त क्या है? ये क्या है आखिर कि जो मुसलसल गुजर रहा है? ये जब न गुजरा था तब कहाँ था? कहीं तो होगा. गुजर गया है तो अब कहाँ है? कहीं तो होगा. कहाँ से आया, किधर गया है? ये कब से कब तक का सिलसिला है? ये वक्त क्या है? ये वाक़े, हादसे, तसादुम, हर एक गम और हर एक मसरत, हर एक कज़ियत, हर एक लज्जत, हर एक तबस्सुम, हर एक आंसू, हर एक नगमा, हर एक खुशबू, वो ज़ख्म का दर्द हो कि वो लम्स का हो जादू, खुद अपनी आवाज़ हो कि माहौल की सदाएं, ये जहन में बनती और बिगड़ती हुई फ़ज़ाएं, वो फ़िक्र में आए ज़लज़ले हों कि दिल की हलचल, तमाम एहसास, सारे जज्बे, ये जैसे पत्ते हैं, बहते पानी की सतह पर जैसे तैरते हैं, अभी यहाँ हैं, अभी वहाँ हैं और अब है उछल. दिखाई देता नहीं है लेकिन ये कुछ तो है जो कि बह रहा है. ये कैसा दरिया है? किन पहाड़ों से आ रहा है? ये किस समंदर को जा रहा है? ये वक्त क्या है? कभी कभी मैं ये सोचता हूँ कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझ जा रहे हैं, मगर हकीकत में पेड़ अपनी जगह खड़े हैं. तो क्या ये मुमकिन है सारी सतियां कतार अंदर कतार अपनी जगह खड़ी हों, ये वक्त साकित हो और हम ही गुजर रहे हों? इस एक लम्हे में सारे लम्हे, तमाम सदियां छुपी हुई हों, न कोई आइंदा न गुज़िश्ता. जो हो चुका है वो हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है हो रहा है. मैं सोचता हूँ कि क्या ये मुमकिन है सच्ची हो कि सफ़र में हम हैं, गुज़रते हम हैं, जिसे समझते हैं हम गुज़रता है वो थमा है. गुज़रता है या थमा हुआ है, इकाई है या बटा हुआ है मुंजमद या पिघल रहा है, किसे खबर है, किसे पता है ये वक्त क्या है?
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
What is this that we call time? This thing that is forever passing. Where was it before? Somewhere, that's for sure. Where is it now that it has moved on? It must be somewhere beyond. From whence did it come? Where has it gone? How did this chain of events begin? When will it be done? What is this that we call time? These incidents, mishaps, conflicts, each sorrow, each joy, each agony, each delight, each smile, each teardrop, each song and each sweet smell, be it the hurt of a wound or a healing touch, be it the individual voice or the call of the zeitgeist, be it the winds that bring comfort or rage in the mind, be it the upheavals that come with caring or those palpitations of the heart, all our feelings and all our emotions are like leaves skimming on running water, now here, now there, and then nowhere. You cannot see it, and yet there must be something there for it to flow. What kind of river is this? From which mountains does it come? To which ocean does it go? What is this that we call time? Sometimes I think of trees glimpsed from a running train that seem to move in the opposite direction, but in truth are all standing still in their places. So is it possible that all the ages, row upon row, are all in their given places, that time stands still, and it is we who move, all moments held in this moment, all the ages concealed in the now, no future and no past. All that has happened is happening here. All that is to come is present in this moment. I wonder, is it possible, is it true that it is we who are journeying, that it is we who pass by, and all that we think of as moving is, in fact, still? Whether passing or motionless, whether whole or fragmented, whether frozen or melting away, who knows? Who can tell? What is this that we call time?
And perhaps the last one for the evening.
Before the poet on my left, Supriya, takes over. Javed Akhtar has always been an outspoken critic of fundamental thought, be it religious or political. The next poem, a more recent poem, Naya Hukumnama, makes this amply clear. But it does more. It shows up a side that is strangely not so common in his poetry, though he cannot actually speak two sentences without it, a sharp, piercing wit. Naya Hukumnama.
किसी का हुक्म है सारी हवाएं हमेशा चलने से पहले बताएं कि उनकी समझ क्या है। किसी का हुक्म है सारी हवाएं हमेशा चलने से पहले बताएं कि उनकी समझ क्या है। हवाओं को बताना ये भी होगा चलेंगी जब तो क्या रफ्तार होगी कि आंधी की इजाजत अब नहीं। हमारी रेत की सब ये फसीलें ये कागज के महल जो बन रहे हैं हिफाजत इनकी करना है जरूरी और आंधी है पुरानी इनकी दुश्मन ये सभी जानते हैं। किसी का हुक्म है दरिया की लहरें जरा ये सरकशी कम कर लें अपनी हद में ठहरें। किसी का हुक्म है दरिया की लहरें जरा ये सरकशी कम कर ले अपनी हद में ठहरें। उभरना और फिकरना और बिखर कर फिर उभरना गलत है उनका ये हंगामा करना। ये सब है सिर्फ वहशत की अलामत, बगावत की अलामत। बगावत तो नहीं बर्दाश्त होगी ये वहशत तो नहीं बर्दाश्त होगी। अगर लहरों को है दरिया में रहना तो उनको होगा अब चुपचाप बहना।
वाह।
किसी का हुक्म है इस गुलसिता में बस अब एक रंग के ही फूल होंगे। कुछ अफसर होंगे जो ये तय करेंगे गुलिस्तां किस तरह बनना है कल का। यकीनन फूल यकरंगी तो होंगे मगर ये रंग होगा कितना गहरा कितना हल्का ये अफसर तय करेंगे। किसी को ये कोई कैसे बताए गुलिस्तां में कहीं भी फूल यकरंगी नहीं होते, कभी हो ही नहीं सकते कि हर एक रंग में छुपकर बहुत से रंग रहते।
क्या बात है जावेद साहब।
जिन्होंने बाग यकरंगी बनाना चाहे थे उनको जरा देखो कि जब एक रंग में 100 रंग जाहिर हो गए हैं तो वो अब कितने परेशान हैं, वो कितने तंग रहते हैं।
क्या इशारा है, वाह जावेद साहब वाह।
किसी को ये कोई कैसे बताए हवाएं और लहरें कब किसी का हुक्म सुनती हैं। हवाएं हाकिमों की मुट्ठियों में हथकड़ी में कैद खानों में नहीं रुकती। ये लहरें रोकी जाती हैं तो दरिया कितना भी हो पुरसुकून बेताब होता है।
और इस बेताबी का अगला कदम सैलाब होता।
Wasn't that just terrific? Someone has decreed that the very air should, before it begins to move, share which way it plans to go. Let the wind take immediate heed. We need prior notice of direction and speed. We wish it to be so. And to one and all declare this writ, from now on storms we do not permit. These paper palaces, these walls of sand must be kept from harm. We well understand that storms are a grievous threat, and all such threats must be met with a firm hand. Someone has decreed that henceforth the wave, indeed all waves, in every river must learn to behave. How dare they rise and fall and rise again unabated? This is patently wrong and won't be tolerated. These are signs of frenzy, portents of revolt, and they must come to an immediate halt. If these waves still wish to be free, then flow unobtrusively, say we. Someone has decreed the need for monochrome. Flowers must no longer be tainted with an exuberance of color. Their home, the garden, will now be uniformly painted. We will appoint official wardens to oversee all future gardens. Flowers of a uniform color will abide, but how deep or light, the officers will decide. Who is to tell the powers that be that flowers are never uniform, you see? It's simply untenable, it can't be done, for even a single color contains more than one. Let us learn from those who had thus decreed and most earnestly had tried to breed flowers that looked the same. How pilloried they are at this game. Who is to tell the powers that be, wind and wave do not bend the knee? You cannot hope to chain the wind or freedom of the waves rescind. For while you believe that you will win, this seeming calm seethes within. What comes next is a tsunami. Who will tell the powers that be? Thank you.
Right, now for the conversation part of the session. Those were actually superb. And our session is called Jadu because Javed Saab's handle is called, he uses Jadu. I want to dive straight in because we have very little time. Why did you, you've recited 6 poems for us, you've translated these 6 poems. They're from his 2 poetry books, Tarkash and Lava. Tarkash, I think, came out in the 90s, and Lava is more recent, 2015-16. Right. Why did you choose, of the 50-60 poems in the 2 books, these 6 to translate and share?
I presume if we follow what Javed is saying, then all poems are at this moment with us now, at this moment. So I suppose that's a facetious answer. The answer is that these are the poems I happen to have translated. You see, the problem is that I am an accidental translator. Nobody has commissioned these translators. They have never been printed. No one has heard them. You're very lucky.
That might change today.
And so why these poems? Only because why not these poems? And that's the best answer I can give you.
You know, when you pick up Urdu poetry books of so many other poets, and even Ghazal albums, which have been set to music, they have very romantic, mostly very mood and romantic titles. Look at the titles of these 2 books. Tarkash is a quiver of arrows. And Lava, I mean, both the titles themselves are full of flame and fury and passion. And that, I think, is evident in every single poem in the book, whether it is nostalgic or romantic or mood. If you had to title these 2 books, if they weren't called Lava and Tarkash, whereabouts would you,
I wouldn't know how to answer that because they have titles already and I'm not quarreling with them at all. I think what they do is they give us an idea of the combative nature of Javed Akhtar. He is a person who knows his mind and he wishes you to know it as well. And that's something that any conversation with him, you have to deal with that side of Javed Saab. And I think quiver, and he has many arrows in his quiver, and lava, and he explodes. I've never seen him lose his temper, but he does have...
But he has other ways to cut
No,
you
he
to
has a
size.
subterranean sort of fire which he exudes, and which is obviously there if you know Javed. And particularly if he is talking about wrong, and particularly if he's talking about God, you discover the explosive side of Javed Akhtar, because he and God are not friends.
Of course, the committed atheist. There are so many poems in Turkish, and you've touched upon Waqt. You've translated Waqt, and it's a brilliant original, and it's a brilliant translation. Because it's a nazm, it has no meter, it has no radif, it has no qafiyah. How difficult was your process from, you've picked up one ghazal from Lava, the others are all from Turkish. How difficult was it to get the radif of ये कब से कब तक का सिलसिला है, ये वक्त न था तो कहाँ था, कहीं तो होगा?
See, I didn't work with rhyme in that particular case because I failed. Meaning I couldn't have pulled it off. My intention in doing these translations, which I do in cars, and I do, I like doing them. They're like crossword puzzles to me. I mean, this is blasphemous, but that's what they are. I love doing them. They're games. They're like
Piecing it together.
Yeah, it's great fun for me to do it. And because I have no publisher, no deadline, no critics who are going to read it, and I don't really care. So that's fun to get into. But sometimes I use rhyme. I use a lot of internal rhymes because I feel that helps in keeping flow and keeping cadence. But my major intention in doing translations, even though that may not be the question you asked, but since that's the answer I have, I'm giving it to you, is that my main intention is to, make it sound poetic to start with. I've read too many translations where I read a translation and I say, is this poetry? Is that guy who wrote this really a poet? And that's because the translations do not give me a sense, they give me very often a sense of meaning, but they very often don't give me a sense of cadence in the language in which it's been translated, a kind of internal rhythm, an internal melody that is so intrinsic to poetry.
So speaking of cadence, if Waqt was called Samay, which is almost the exact translation, how would your sensibilities respond to it?
Since it's called Waqt, I don't have to answer that question. I have no idea. These are very difficult questions you're asking, particularly to somebody who is not trained in language. I don't know Hindi and I don't know Urdu. And
your translations would suggest otherwise.
No, I know translation. And I think, I'm going to read a poem because I feel that all these questions get answered in this poem that I wrote after I did a session with Javed Akhtar. And it's tough being on stage.
This is the poem on translation.
Yeah, if I can, I should be here somewhere. One second. So I think basically you're asking me questions about why did you do this and why did you do that, of which I really have no answers. But what I did do is after I had a session with Javed Saab, which is he read his poetry sitting here and I read out my translations sitting here. And since we are still friends, I'm presuming it's all right. So what I did after that is I thought about translation and about how Javed Saab may be reacting to what I've written. And this is what I feel. This is my answer to all your questions, since, as I said, I'm an accidental translator. This is a poem on translation. This is my poem. It's not a translation. Do your poems feel stripped of their essence when I dress them in my words? Or instead do they, like migratory birds, take flight, travel day and night to nest elsewhere and live for a while under a different dispensation, in a different style? Does the slant of the sun there touch them with the same warmth? Does the change in weather make them puff up their feathers and strut about and sing? Do their voices soar above the din? And does the occasional bird lover thrill to find them trilling in their midst? Or do they only please the ornithologist? Who can know? Who can say? Some reach where they want to go, others perish along the way. Those who survive seem to do so happily. But then one day, these birds, unlike words, miss their homeland and fly away. Translations, on the other hand, stay.
Really lovely, and really, really does sort of summarize all.
That's my answer to every question, since
Every
I'm not a
question.
learned translator.
Thank you so much. I think our time is up. Thank you so much for this wonderful
Thank you,
translation.
Supriya, for sharing the stage.
And you know, it's really hard to translate Urdu poetry to English. And most of these translations and all of these poems that you've heard today are absolutely spot on in terms of nuance, meter, sensibility, and thought.
Thank you, Supriya.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I shall enjoy my dinner.